So when I'm running workouts for my clients, one of the things that I have to take into consideration is what dose is appropriate for someone on any particular day. Like, that's the big question. Like, a lot of us, we know that we need to exercise. We know that we need to strength train. We know that we need to build our cardiorespiratory endurance. Like, all these things are givens. But how do we know what the appropriate dosage is? Now, there's kind of two sort of thoughts on this. Like, there are a subgroup of people out there who just exercise every single day. But that usually means they're doing something like going for a walk every day, or maybe they're going to the gym and they're going through a circuit of machines. So the dose kind of stays the same every day. And I think that's great. But there's another subgroup of people where I kind of fall into this category, is where we want to train to get better. We're not trying to just sustain any certain level of fitness. We're literally training to get better as we get older, because the more fitness we can develop over the course of our life, the further we get away from aging and, quite honestly, what I call the death line, the zero line. So we want to build our fitness as we get older. So people who really want to build, people who really want to get better as time goes on, that's where it becomes way more important to get the dosage just right. And the truth is, sometimes dosage can be a little bit higher. Sometimes dosage needs to be a little bit lower, right? It just depends on what's going on in any particular person's life at any period of time. Maybe you didn't sleep good last night, so today might be appropriate to kind of bring the dose down. Maybe you've had great sleep. Maybe you've been feeling very energetic, so then the dosage can be a little bit higher. And when we're working with somebody, those are the kinds of things that I think are really, really important. More is not better, less is not better. And this kind of goes for everything in the health world, right? Just like less body fat is not better, more body fat is not better. There's kind of a Goldilocks zone there, right? So the same thing goes for your training. Now, then the question becomes like, well, what is the best way to figure out what the dose should be on a day-to-day basis? And I think this is where it really becomes valuable to have someone who is programming for you, right? If you have a coach who really knows what they're doing and understands kind of the nuance of this whole thing, and you're someone who's willing to communicate and collaborate on the journey, because I believe that any coach-athlete, coach-client relationship, there needs to be a level of communication there so that we can achieve great things together, right? So how do we really know? There's a few different ways. Mostly up to this point in time, it's been largely subjective, right? And even working with some really high-level athletes over the course of my career, a lot of times it would be they would come into the gym for a strength conditioning session, and it was usually a conversation of, hey, how are you feeling today? How did you sleep last night? Did you eat today? These are kind of the conversations that you want to kind of figure out what's going on in an athlete's body and an athlete's mind to see what the dosage should be. So even a great programmer, even a coach who knows how to program exercise really, really well, best laid plans sometimes need to be adjusted, right? Like, sometimes I'll program for someone and it might be just a little bit too high for where they're at right now, right? So we can make some adjustments on the fly. But if I get to know a person really well, it becomes way easier for me to program and to adjust dosages as time goes on. So largely it's been subjective. There is some technology out there that you can use to look at they call it like recovery, right? You can look at your recovery and we can quantify this. But what I found, even with quantifying some of this stuff with some of the wearables and the technology, even that a lot of times is not good enough, because if you really think about it, human physiology is pretty freaking amazing. There's a lot of different things going on in the human body. So to try to condense someone's readiness or recovery all down into just one single number becomes, in my experience, almost impossible. But here is the number one, probably most effective way to look at recovery right now, and that would be something called an HRV score, heart rate variability. So every single person has some variability between heartbeats. And the more variability you have, the more recovered you are. And I'm not going to get too into the science of it here, but there is a way to quantify that. So it gives us a clue as to whether or not someone is prepared for something that's going to be a little bit higher dose, higher intensity, maybe more volume, maybe a combination of both, right? And then a lower number, sometimes we have to kind of back things off a little bit. But what I also find is, like, that's again where the communication comes in, because I've seen people with low HRV scores perform exceptionally well because the number wasn't a true reflection of what was really truly going on, right? Because again, there's other things going on besides just heart rate variability that we need to take into consideration. So if you're looking for a way to know, do I go high intensity? Do I go low intensity? Do I do a high volume day? Do I do a low volume day? I think a lot of it is going to be just the way that you feel. Some days I get into the gym and I'm like, man, I just don't really feel like being here today. I know I'm going to do something, but I go there and I just don't feel that good. Maybe I didn't sleep good the night before, whatever it might be. And then once I start moving and I start working out, I start feeling really good. And I can have a great day despite not even having a great HRV score or not having a good night's sleep. It's pretty amazing. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the mental strength of people. But then again, we have to be careful of that too, because some people are so mentally strong that they just push themselves through anything and they work at a high dose all the time. So again, I think if you're really trying to figure out what the dose needs to be, the ideal dose would be the dose where you can see consistent improvement over time, right? There's always going to be little ups and downs on the journey, but you want to see consistent, measurable improvements in your performance, meaning we want to see you getting stronger, measurably stronger. We want to see you getting more powerful, measurably more powerful. We want to see your aerobic capacity improve measurably. And I don't just mean HRV scores, I mean your actual performance. When we can see those things increase over time, that's when we know we've got things pretty dialed in. Here's another thing that you can take a look at is rates of injury, right? Because if we overdo stuff, if we overtrain someone, you are going to be more susceptible to injuries and also illness. And the two I's, injury and illness, those are the things that derail most really well-intentioned people and even high-level athletes. So get your dosage right. And I think, again, the best thing to do is to, number one, kind of listen to how your body feels and be able to make adjustments on the fly. Number two, get a coach who knows about these things, who's been doing this for a very long period of time and understands that dosage matters and knows how to program for someone on a day-to-day basis to make adjustments, sometimes on the fly. There are clients that will message me in the middle of a workout and be like, hey, I just don't feel good today. Something's off. And we can make adjustments and we can make, recommendations really just in that moment. So it's really important to have an expert here. Otherwise, you could be training too little. Dosage could be too low. Dosage could be too high, and both of those things are not best case scenarios, because then you're just kind of wasting time and you're putting yourself at risk for some silly injuries or even illness. So go out, get yourself a coach, find someone who's going to be able to program for you and be able to communicate with you and help you on this entire journey.